Billy Cunningham, the great American, and every now and then I like to check in with Congressman Brad Wenstrup on some of the big committees in the House about what's happening in Washington. It's kind of scary, kind of frightening. And Brad Wenstrup, doctor, soldier, and congressman, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show. And Brad, how are you?
I'm doing all right. In spite of all that's going on around us, we're not going to let it beat us.
No.
Today is the March for Life, and we've got so many people coming to Washington, regardless of restrictions, to show their respect for life.
All right, let's talk about what happened at the news conference with the president on January the 19th on Tuesday. Completely out of control. One thing I did was turn down the volume, and sometimes I like to watch the means and manner of presentation. It looked like Will Gear on Walton's Mountain for about 2 or 3 minutes as he's stumbling, fumbling, and rumbling. And one of the saddest things that happened is that, according to the Ukrainians and many others in Europe, he gave permission for the Russians to invade the Ukraine, depending upon whether it's a partial invasion or a real invasion. Now there's a cleanup on aisle 6, and all of a sudden everyone's coming back. It's very clear what he said. If it was clear what he said, you wouldn't have to say it so many times because it's not clear. And so what is the sense on the Republican side in the House about the performance of our president giving permission to the Russians to kill thousands of Ukrainians? And secondly, what if Trump was in the White House, said exactly the same thing? How would the media be reporting on this novice, this idiot who's running the presidency with no foreign policy experience, giving permissions of the Russians to invade Ukraine, when we got this expert on the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, supposedly knows all the characters? Putin's a good friend of his. He knows Zelensky very well. This guy is stumbling, mumbling, and fumbling. Can you smell what I'm cooking? There's a question in there somewhere.
Yeah, he said there may be a minor incursion. Like, that's okay.
It's okay.
Can you imagine? Yeah, you imagine if Donald Trump said that, they would be going out of their minds. Look, we know what they're doing. Their buildup is getting even greater. They plan every intention of going into Ukraine, a place that strives to be a democracy. I was just there right before Christmas. They are fighting. They do not like the Russians. Putin tries to claim that they want to be part of Russia, and they don't. And he's just sitting back. And there are so many things that we could have been doing, and we could have been expediting them to be able to defend equipment to be able to defend themselves. Of course, a lot of that equipment's still sitting in Afghanistan. But we certainly could have helped the Ukrainians defend themselves. And sanctions, we have put together proposals for increased sanctions that would really hurt Russia. Putin has a lot to lose in this situation, and we actually could have saved him from himself if we made a show of strength. But it looks like it's going to happen. He sold it to his people in one way or another, and this administration has done a horrible job, and China's just sitting back to wait to do the same thing in Taiwan. Yeah. We have just been showing nothing but weakness and accommodation, and you look that we're back in talks with Iran. This is exactly the opposite of what we want to do if we want to preserve democracies around the world and make the world a safer place.
You're on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and I think at some point soon, maybe in about 9 or 10 months, the Republicans will take control, and then there'll be investigations and power. But no matter what we do, right, wrong, good, or bad, for the next 3 years, no matter what happens, either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris is the president. Either one, and backing them up at this point is Nancy Pelosi. So no matter what we do, we're out of it. And so a question was asked by President Joe Biden. Well, when he gets off teleprompter, there's a problem. Whenever he talks extemporaneously, there's a problem. When he's on the teleprompter, he's not so bad. So the president said, just name 3 things that the Republicans in the Congress are proposing they would like to do. Just name 3 things. So Congressman Brad Wenstrup, name 3 things you'd like to do that Joe Biden challenged you. You have nothing you want to do. Give me 3.
Well, first of all, I would not be trying to pass something like Build Back Broke. We would continue with Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which encourage manufacturing, will help our supply chain. We would be cleaning that up. Secondly, we would be tightening up our border. Thirdly, we would have a strong national defense and make sure that is taken care of, which is right now on hold. So defense projects are being held up because we have not had the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, appropriated, and they live year to year, which is no way to plan a military. We would continue and reopen the Keystone Pipeline and we would put sanctions on Putin's pipeline that's feeding Europe, and I'll never understand why they would do that. I would be strengthening NATO and making NATO's presence more clear in Europe so that the Russians get the clear message. Don't they wonder, don't their own citizens wonder why there's about 30 countries that band together to form NATO? It's all because of Russia. How can all those countries be wrong? And so, you know, there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that we want to do. And I'll tell you, when it comes to a lot of the other things that need cleaning up, it's very difficult for us right now because we don't have subpoena power. Well, I hope come January of next year, that gavel starts banging and we start calling in people to be accountable for their actions that are harming America each and every day.
I had on Lieutenant Colonel Scheller, who threw his rank on the table about a week ago talking about what happened in Afghanistan. There has been no investigation conducted as to how it was possible for Joe Biden to have the worst foreign policy disaster and debacle of this century, in which at least 13 soldiers were killed, I say murdered, hundreds of others were mortally wounded, including a fine Marine from southeast Indiana. There's been no investigation about what happened. The media simply moved on from Afghanistan because it is so bad, awful for Joe Biden, and now he's blundering and stumbling into more disasters in the Ukraine, which to me is absolutely incredible. And it's not going to stop, as I said, for a period of time. But one good thing is happening in Ohio. This morning about 7:30 a.m., I'm watching CNBC Squawk Box with my good friend Joe Kernan. He is on the CEO of Intel, and I about fell off my couch when the CEO of Intel announced that they have struck a deal with the state of Ohio in order to put a $3 billion chip-making facility in Licking County. Now, I'm not sure where in the hell Licking County is. I went to Siri and said, where's Licking County? She referred me to some porn site. I have no idea where Licking County is, but that's going to be like 100,000 jobs, billions of dollars of investment in Ohio. That's the kind of stuff we need to do right there. Now, it's not a big deal in the mainstream media because they're all about getting rid of Trump and the January 6th committee being weaponized to destroy Republicans instead of finding the truth about why Nancy Pelosi left the Capitol unprotected despite the efforts of Donald Trump to get it done. But isn't it a big deal? I know it's not specifically in your district, but when billions of dollars are invested, hundreds of thousands of jobs, at least 3,000 permanent jobs at that facility. Isn't that what government should be about?
That's exactly what it should be about. It should be about creating opportunity right here in America. When we talk about our supply chain, it's unbelievable. If you know, when I was in Iraq, if you'd have told me that my protective equipment and the pharmaceuticals that I used to take care of our troops relied on an adversary, China, I would say, how did we ever get here? This is exactly what we need to have happen. And I'm glad that they chose Ohio because I think they're going to get a very strong workforce coming from Ohio and people moving to Ohio to work for them. And this is good for Ohio, but it's good for the country. You know, we are being held hostage by our adversaries who are controlling our supply chain. And we've let this happen to ourselves over the last 50 years, and we got to start reversing it. But when you ask what we're for, we are for that type of an action, which Build Back Broke would do just the opposite because they want to increase taxes on corporations that then make it more and more difficult to do business in the United States of America, which makes us less secure as a nation. You know, this year of Biden has been one crisis after another. You know, I looked up the word crisis because I don't like to overuse that, right? I don't like to over-sensationalize things. But the word crisis just comes down to when you have to make an important decision. And you know, we do have an economic crisis. We do have an energy crisis, a border crisis, an education crisis, a crime crisis, a COVID crisis, a national security crisis. And really, we're talking about Ukraine and Taiwan. We have a global security crisis. But the one thing he tried to tell America yesterday, when he was asked the question, he says there's not a cognitive crisis going on. Well, that's not what most of Americans believe. And he sure didn't paint a pretty picture of the state of America. And when he tried to make it rosy, I don't think that people believe him. And a recent poll showed his approval rating is at 33%. That's abysmal. But you know what? It's earned. It's been earned. And, you know, this is a guy who you go back to when he was a senator and you talk about what happened in Afghanistan, but when we were leaving Vietnam, and this is in the congressional record, Senator Joe Biden said, we have no obligation, moral or otherwise, to evacuate any foreign national. We were trying so hard to get those Afghanis that worked with us, that risked their lives, gave their lives, many of them, that have worked with us, to let them use a special immigrant visa to come to the United States of America. I sponsored 2 from when I served in Iraq, and one is a cardiologist in Ohio, and the other is doing family practice in Texas. And that now we have people in Afghanistan that are still begging for help and in hiding if they haven't been killed yet. We surrendered to the Taliban. This is what we got: weakness and crisis after crisis, and their self-inflicted wounds.
Well, lastly, now it's become public that Education Secretary Miguel Cardona requested a letter from the National School Boards Association so he could act and call the parents angry with public school systems as terrorists. And that, to me, is an area of ripe investigation. So the Biden administration tells the National School Board, hey, quietly send us a letter requesting that FBI be used to target parents under terrorism laws. And then they did that, and it boomeranged back on Miguel Cardona, and he's not answered for that at all. But we got thousands of things going on, but it's good news today about Licking County. Do you know where Licking County is? And where in the hell is that?
Well, it's north of my district.
It's up there somewhere.
Yeah, it's more towards, I think, the area of Columbus.
Columbus.
So, but it's going to be great for Ohio. Right. You know, really good for Ohio. You're right about the education piece too, and the domestic terrorists. You know, really, they should have been talking about Antifa and the riots of previous summer, and all that took place then, and maybe do some work on that instead of going after parents. But you know, we get to see what's going on in Virginia, being in D.C. as much as we are, and that new governor has taken action, and you know, he's going to empower parents. They have a right. You know what? I'm grateful. My son is at St. Gertrude's in Madeira, and they've been going to school, and he's getting a great education. So, you know, it's out there. Maybe if people had a choice of schools, it would make a huge difference.
Well, you know, I spent many years coaching basketball with the home of the Bulldogs, helping to build that new auditorium. Of course, 25 years ago it was new, maybe not so old anymore. But I tell you what, Catholic schools get it done, and public schools with teachers' unions look for a reason not to work. And it's one thing to oppose your opponents, but when he compared Republicans and those who wanted to keep the filibuster, similar to racists like George Wallace, who, by the way, was a Democrat, and Jefferson Davis, who was a Democrat, to compare you, me, Tony Bender, and other great Americans to racists of the past that declared war on the United States of America is a bridge too far. And I like to keep Joe Biden on a teleprompter so he doesn't make a fool of himself. But Brad Wenstrup, we got to run. Congressman, thank you again for reporting on the Bill Cunningham Show. Good luck, and we'll see what happens in the future. But lots of matters to look at in about a year from now, and I pray to God the American people wise up. But Congressman Brad Wenstrup, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, we'll do it again. Thank you. Let's continue.